Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah. This video has been 1 year in the making. I read this author for the first time about a year ago, and ever since I discovered her, I have been trying to read her entire backlist, everything she's ever written, which I think is going to be impossible because she's done so many short stories. But in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Silvia Moreno-Garcia, a new favorite author of mine, and give you a little bit of insight as to why I love this author, a little bit of information about her, as well as all of the books and the short stories of hers that I've read and how I rank them, and where to start with this author because she has a very impressive portfolio. I was first introduced to this author on BookTube. I saw a recommendation for Mexican Gothic. Everyone and their mother was reading Mexican Gothic, and it won, I think, the Goodreads Choice Award for the horror category in 2019, I believe. And this is Silvia Moreno-Garcia's most famous novel. It has the most ratings on Goodreads, and I totally bought into the hype, and I was like, I don't really read horror, but I was willing to give it a try, and this is where my entry point was. And unfortunately, I gave this book a 3 stars. I could see the potential. I enjoyed the writing, the characters, but the horror elements are what didn't quite work for me and make me love this book. So it's one of those books where the twist at the end will either work or it won't work for you. But this is where I got started with her work and where I fell into the rabbit hole of this author. One of the things that I found kind of overwhelming about this author when I started to get into her is she writes in a ton of different genres, so I was kind of unsure of where to start. She's got a lot of horror, sci-fi, noir, and fantasy, and kind of everything in between, historical fiction. So this video is kind of going to be talking about each of the books of hers that I've read and kind of talking about the common themes among them as well as the differences between them and kind of breaking it up by genre. So if you're a fan of a particular genre, you can start in that area of her work. And if you like her writing, you can, maybe try something in a different genre that you're not typically inclined to reach for. So Silvia Moreno-Garcia is a Mexican-born woman who moved to Canada, and she has been writing and editing for quite a long time. Most popularly known for Mexican Gothic. She has written novels before Mexican Gothic, and thankfully those books are getting more attention, I think, now that Mexican Gothic has gotten so popular. I will say I have not read one of her older works, which is called Signal to Noise. This is a book that I think was her first novel and is actually being re-released later in 2022. It's getting like a rebrand, a new cover, because of how popular she is becoming nowadays. So I'm excited to get my hands on this. It's not available at the library. I can't buy a copy right now because I think they're waiting until the new covers come out. I'm also desperately waiting for The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which is a historical fiction, science fiction blend novel about a woman who's the daughter of a mad scientist. And this is her newest book. This is coming out later in 2022 as well. So this is, of course, a video of its time. I can only read so many books, but hopefully I will make an addendum to this video as Silvia Moreno writes more and I read more of her work. As a character-driven reader, I am particularly drawn to authors who can execute these really incredible characters, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I love Silvia Moreno-Garcia so much. Another thing I quite enjoy about her work is that she always has elements of Mexican, Central American folklore and culture embedded into every single one of her books. And almost, I would say not all, but almost all of her books have some sort of historical Mexican setting. The first category we're going to talk about is if you are a person who wants to just get a taste of this author's writing. I'm going to be talking about all of the anthologies that this author has been in that I've read, as well as her own short story collection that she wrote in its entirety. The first one I'm going to be talking about is New Suns, which is a collection of science fiction and fantasy short stories written by people of color. And I didn't love this collection, but I found a couple of authors that I wanted to further look into from this collection. And in this set of short stories, Silvia Moreno-Garcia has a horror vampire short story that is called Give Me Your Black Wings, Oh Sister. And I quite enjoyed this short story. This is a very, very short story, kind of about a vampire creature. And that's all I'll say because it is very, very short. But if you are maybe wanting to get a feel for a bunch of different authors, maybe that's a good place to start. So I quite enjoyed her short story in this collection and gave that particular short story 4 stars. Then she also has a short story in Sword Stone Table, Old Legends, New Voices, and she actually has a Lady of Shallot science fiction retelling in this collection of retold Arthurian legends. And in that one, it's Lady of Shallot lives in a giant high-rise, and she just stays in her tower, and she hires someone to bring her memories so that she can look through the eyes of these other people, and one of those happens to be Lancelot, who she kind of becomes obsessed with. I didn't love that short story. This is also a great example of if you want to try a bunch of different authors at the same time as Silvia Moreno-Garcia, this is another way to go. Then we have Silvia Moreno-Garcia's own short story collection that she wrote in its entirety, and that's called This Strange Way of Dying. And this is stories of magic, desire, and the fantastical. It was the winner of the 2020 Sunburst Award. And this is a collection of horror, science fiction, and fantasy short stories entirely written by this author, and I think this is a great collection. I don't typically love short stories. I'm trying to get into them. I'm trying to branch out and read more short story collections, but for a short story collection, I found this to be a great mix of all types of stories. And the thing that carries across all of her work are the characters, as well as the folklore and the Mexican culture. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars as a collection. There is a particular story in here called Flash Frame that I thought was creepy and really exceptionally well done, and I gave that particular story 5 stars. If you are a fan of sci-fi, Silvia Moreno-Garcia has a sci-fi novella called Prime Meridian that I highly recommend. This is a short little novella about a woman named Amelia who is kind of having a rough go of it, but she is desperate to leave Earth and go and be part of the Mars colony, and she's willing to do anything to get there. And so this is about her kind of struggling through life and trying to get ahead and save enough money to go to Mars. So this is set in Mexico City. This isn't set on Mars, so the science fiction elements are very small in this particular novella, but I think it's still enough there to draw in sci-fi readers. Again, the character work in this is incredible. I love reading about messy women who are maybe horrible people in real life, but I just love reading characters like Amelia. Oh, I also ended up giving Prime Meridian 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really like this novella. Fantasy readers, if you like fantasy, here are all of the fantasy books by this author. So the first one I'm going to talk about is The Return of the Sorceress. This is another novella about a woman named Yalxi. I can't say her name. But she was overthrown. She was the headmistress of this magical guild. She was overthrown by her ex-lover, and Yalxi is on a path of revenge. And to do this, she is resurrecting someone that she murdered to help her get revenge on her lover. So I didn't love this. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought the world building, since it was a novella, I didn't get enough world building in this. I wanted more of this world, essentially. But this is a short one if you want to just pick it up real quick. It was pretty fun. And then we have some of my favorites by this author. We have Gods of Jade and Shadow, which is a historical fantasy about this woman named Cassiopeia, and she is living in the house of her very wealthy grandfather, and she's not doing very well there. They don't really like her, and they force her to do all of the menial tasks around the house. And in this time period, women are very looked down upon. So Cassiopeia dreams of escaping this house. And one day she's cleaning her grandfather's study and she finds a box. And in the box is the Mayan god of death that she accidentally releases, and he recruits Cassiopeia to help him retake his throne from his brother. And so they go off, she runs away with the Mayan god of death to go on this crazy adventure. And this is a true like fantasy adventure story. Definitely like a call to action type thing with a sort of romance, but the romance is not a heavy theme in this one. This I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Of all of the books I've talked about so far, if you want to get a taste for this author's writing, this is one I highly recommend starting with. Then we have The Beautiful Ones. I'm crying because this book is in my top 2 for Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is about Nina, who is being sponsored by her cousin and her cousin's evil wife for a season in this magical fantasy city so she can like find a husband, where she meets Hector Ovray, who is a famous telekinesis performer. And Hector Ovray takes Nina under his wing so she can better control her own telekinetic powers. However, Hector has his own nefarious reasons for getting close to Nina, because Hector is in love with Nina's cousin's wife. Scandalous. This is such a beautiful and messy little like love triangle. It's not really a triangle story, but with all these different characters coming together and kind of manipulating each other, and kind of a coming of age story with Nina as well, as she's kind of a naive character at the beginning of the book and really grows into her own by the end. And I sobbed at the end of this one. This is so good. The fantasy elements of the telekinesis, I'd say, is a really small part of this book as well. So if you're intimidated by the fantasy, this reads more like a historical drama romance with a splash of fantasy. So another one I highly recommend. I gave this one 5 stars. I love this book. If you like horror, she got some for you too. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the only one I don't really recommend and don't really like, and it is The Sound of Footsteps. This is an audio only short story, and this just did nothing for me. This is supposed to be like a scary short story. It didn't do anything for me, so I'm just gonna skip past that one. I gave it 2 stars. Next, we're gonna talk about Mexican Gothic. I touched on this a little bit in the beginning of the video, but Mexican Gothic is about this woman named Noemi, and Noemi gets a letter from her recently married cousin, and her cousin appears to be in trouble. So Noemi packs up her bags and goes to try to help her cousin in this like remote estate. And there's nefarious things going on at this house. So this is a Gothic horror novel, so there's a lot of tension and horror elements. It's Silvia Moreno-Garcia's most popular book on her Goodreads, at least, so you can't really go wrong if you start here with her. But it's not my personal favorite. One I really like is Certain Dark Things. This is a vampire horror novel slash action thriller. It's like vampire horror meets an action movie mixed together, and it's great. This is about Domingo, who is a street kid. He sifts through garbage all day to try to find things that he can sell. And one day Domingo comes across Adele and her giant dog, and Adele is a vampire and Domingo kind of becomes obsessed with her. And so he offers his services to Adele so he can kind of be close to her, and she agrees. And so the two of them team up, but Adele is in a lot of trouble. She is being hunted down by a rival vampire clan, so she has to try to escape Mexico City. So she and Domingo are kind of on the run together. And this is great. Again, this reads a lot like an action movie. You get a couple of other points of view in this as well, from the rival clan and some other side characters, but mostly it's about Domingo and Adele, and this is great. And the dog survives in the end, just saying. If you are looking for an action-packed, bloody, gory vampire story, this is for you. Then we have kind of an interesting category, and that is noir crime fiction. So this is a category or a genre of books that I'm not particularly familiar with. I haven't read a ton of books like this. I've seen more noir film than read books in this genre. However, Silvia Moreno-Garcia does have several books in this kind of genre, and the first one I'm going to talk about is Velvet Was the Night. This is her latest release, and this is about Maite, whose neighbor kind of goes missing, and Maite kind of becomes obsessed with finding her. Maite kind of looks at this neighbor and kind of thinks like, oh, I wish I kind of had your life type of thing. And so she gets kind of wrapped up in the investigation to try and find this missing woman. And then the other point of view is this man named Elvis, and he is part of a gang, and he is set by his boss to also find this missing neighbor. So these two characters are kind of on a similar mission, and we follow both of them as they're kind of woven together, and a larger political drama ensues. So the thing about noir that might be unsatisfying to people is it kind of has an open ending. It has a kind of a action-packed plot. The thing that I like about noir is that it's straight up vibes. It's cigarettes and smoking guns and, you know, sneaking around, that kind of thing. I ended up giving Velvet Was the Night 3 stars. This is not one of my favorite from this author in particular. Now, tied for my favorite book by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, which is a noir crime fiction coming of age story, that is Untamed Shore. This was a real big surprise from me. Of all of the books I've talked about thus far, this is probably an underdog in terms of Silvia Moreno-Garcia's like body of work that she's put out, but I love this book. This is about a teenage girl. She's like 18, you know, on the cusp of womanhood. Her name is Meridian, and she lives in Baja California, and she's bored with her life. She wants to run away. She wants to go to Hollywood. She's dreaming of a better life, but she lives in this like fishing village, and they fish sharks. And one day, three Americans come to their town, and she ends up getting entangled with these three people, when one of them turns up dead. And she gets kind of involved in the investigation and the cover-up. This is a true coming-of-age story / crime novel, and this, again, has excellent vibes. This is about Meridian getting what she wants and doing whatever she can to get what she wants and to get her way. And I loved this so deeply. I was just so impressed with the character work in this one. It might not be for everyone, but it certainly worked for me. I thought the writing in this was spectacular. So, of all of the books I talked about, my personal favorites are Untamed Shore, and the beautiful ones. Both of these books are 5-star reads from me. As far as where I would recommend to start with this author, I've kind of already touched that in terms of genre, but I really do think Gods of Jade and Shadow is a really good entry point into this author, as well as Mexican Gothic. I think these two books are really great places to start in terms of novels. Again, you can get a taste for her writing in the anthologies that she's written or other short story collections that she's been a part of, but that is just what I recommend. In the description down below, I'm going to have a list of all of the books and short stories and collections that I talked about and list them in order of my personal ranking, as well as a list of the books by genre. So you can kind of look in the description to get a little bit more details. So thank you so much for watching and listening to me gush about one of my favorite authors of all time. Have you read anything by Silvia Moreno-Garcia? I would love to know, and hopefully I've piqued your interest with one of these great works. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye.